In the sprawling world of Teyvat, adventurers have embarked on a journey to explore its diverse regions. Among these regions is the mysterious land of Sumeru, shrouded in mystique and wonder. A beautiful place filled with lush jungles and known to be the region of wisdom. Now, did you realize I was looking at one side of Sumeru, a very small portion of it, specifically the green area? Why don't we take a look at the 90% area? Yeah, it's mostly desert, and very boring desert at that, too. It goes on for a long... Sumeru released about a year ago, and with it, the Dendro element, and I, as well as many others, was super excited for this. The Dendro element was like the last element we were missing, and with it came 3 new elemental reactions and tons of new opportunities for 36 starring Spiral Abyss, beating bosses, hitting high numbers, whole new reactions added with just one element, so many new opportunities. But shortly after its release, I quickly grew bored. You see, when Sumeru released, it was only about half the size of Liyue and Mondstadt and about a fourth of the size of Inazuma. But the Archon quest really made up for it, it seemed. But after I completed it, I was left wanting more, and the mechanics around Sumeru weren't really the more I was looking for. You see, the first Archon quest for Sumeru really was probably my favorite out of all the Archon quests we've gotten so far. It was really interesting and had a really cool concept that came into play later in the story. And honestly, it was a really good introduction to the Archon of this region. But when the second and third chapters came around, I found them quite boring, and even in the interesting parts. I ended up skipping through most of them and only stayed to watch the parts where Dotori showed up, or when Scaramouche became an Archon and we had to fight him. But other than that, I never really felt like I needed to finish them because I never enjoyed finishing those quests. They were just really boring and felt more like talking to a character and going to fight something for a little bit and then going and sitting through twice the amount of dialogue you sat through before. And sure, while this region is beautiful, really, in my opinion, it's only the jungle area. Were released in what I'd like to call the 2 waves. The good wave and everything else. The good wave was the jungle, where we got our first sight at this giant ruin guard, which had a really good quest to go along with it, as well as some of the most beautiful views in the entire game. Look at that sky. Isn't that amazing to look at? Apart from that, we also had the giant trees that were all over the place, as well as a giant raining area with a giant bubble of rain in the center. It really was a sight to behold. And then, the calamity struck. Not long after the first, 2 desert waves released. The first one holding one area with a cool little circle in the middle that I really enjoyed exploring, though I did think it was a bit overboard. The third containing 2 separate areas and adding an entirely new boss as well as an entirely new collection item. This, for me, was the edge. It had pushed me over the edge and was just way too much for me, in my opinion. Now, with this addition of the desert, Sumeru itself, the jungle area, what I truly see as Sumeru, became just a shadow of the desert that it lies next to, still considered part of it. In my personal opinion, Dendro being the main aspect of the Sumeru Desert would mean a region filled with lush jungles and forests for hours of exploration. But in the end, all we got was a little bit of jungle and a lot, and I mean a lot, of desert. It's truly sad, in my opinion, how they did Sumeru like this. And I think it would have been cool to see maybe a little oasis, something more than just the realm of Farakurt, or however you pronounce that. Or a little bit more than the center of the Gabaret Lajar. I don't know how to pronounce these names, honestly, but still, you get my point. There should have been more grass in the region that's supposed to be based off of the grass-based element. And in my opinion, the lack of that was pretty disappointing. Now, along with this new expansion to the desert came 2 more overly long quests. Now, the Aranara quest dragged out forever, but at least it still had some redeeming qualities in the fact that the Aranara were cute and fun. But this quest that they added in the desert was way too long and way too tedious, and I felt like it shouldn't have even been added in the first place. And sure, we did get some beautiful sights like this after completing the quests. In my opinion, it just really wasn't worth it. And we did get a new pet, technically, in Sorush, but really, I don't really think she counts, as she's more of a gadget than she is a pet. Alongside that, it felt like every single event that released after Sumeru had to have some sort of Sumeru connection to it. Be it just a character or it taking place in Sumeru, changing aspects of what was once seen as a community favorite area. For example, the Midsummer Islands were replaced with Bottleland, which was a Sumeru-based area for Mondstadt characters to visit, and also Kokomi was there for some reason, but we just ignore that. Now, alongside that, there was also the Windbloom Festival, which had Kale in it, and how did Kale walk all the way from Sumeru to Mondstadt? Who knows? But, like, she did. And that's important. And she needs to be in the Mondstadt Festival. And in my opinion, it did not really feel needed to make every single event that happened have to include Sumeru in some way. I get Hoyo was excited about it, and so was I. I enjoyed Sumeru at first as well. But it felt like they overdid it. A lot. Like a lot. Like a lot. A lot. Now, looking aside from just visual aspects as well as gameplay mechanics that they added, I think that one of the weakest points was the Traveler's elemental ability. You see, Traveler is technically the first Dendro character you get upon unlocking Sumeru, and it was really a letdown when I saw that this ability was really mid. Like, it sucked. And sure, the Hydro one isn't much better, but still, at least the Hydro one is fun. And often, I just felt like it was pointless to use the Dendro. And I most of the time just stuck to the Geo, because in my opinion, that's the best element to use for Traveler. Now, alongside the overall mid Dendro ability was the even worse addition of the Northlander billets, which, if you thought getting a billet was hard already, guess what? Now there's two, and you can only get one weekly boss that drops them. Isn't that great? Of course, they did add Sumeru character story quest, which added more domain bosses for getting these billets, but it was still overall, when it released, not a great addition. Especially because the weapons are also pretty mid and rely solely on Dendro reactions, which, despite being pretty good, aren't that great, much like everything else about Sumeru. Now, if I were to look at some of the pros of Sumeru, it would have to be the beautiful views and the overall great first Archon story quest, as well as some lovable characters. For example, Alhaitham and Kaveh, and Sino, and Dia. All of them are really enjoyable characters to just have in a story, and their dynamics work really well together. They often made me laugh whenever they were interacting, especially Sino and Alhaitham. They don't really get along, and I felt like that was pretty funny to me. But also characters with better dynamics like Dea and Sino, who got along pretty well in my opinion. They just felt like good characters, really well fleshed out characters. Some other good characters that I liked were characters like Nilo and Nahida, both of which were pretty interesting characters with their own stories and fleshed out character backstory. It really felt like these were real characters that I was interacting with and not just NPCs in a video game. Before, there was a quest that was kinda long, just a teeny bit, and also kind of frustrating. And that was the Aranara quest, quite possibly considered one of the most infuriating and needlessly long quests in this entire game. And I agree. It started off pretty fun, and by the end, it was also pretty fun. But the entire middle experience was just Aranara, Aranara, Aranara. Going around, talking to Aranara, bringing them back to the village, talking to other Aranara, playing a fun song on your harp, talking to another Aranara, talking to another Aranara, talking to another Aranara, playing a fun song on the harp, talking to another Aranara, talking to another Aranara. That was it. I had the occasional fight in between, but it was just talking and talking and talking and talking. And it really, really sucked. Which is why I think that the ending that it had, which no spoilers, but it was a really enjoyable ending in my opinion, was really wasted. Now, aside from the great ending to the overall mid-quest, the Aranara did have something else going for them, and that was their cuteness. Like, look at this little guy. Isn't he just adorable? Don't you just want to pet him? I want to take him home with me. I want to have a plush of an Aranara in my house. But that's besides the point. The quest was enjoyable up until the end, but a thing that I thought was kind of weird is there's a thing in the jungle that I'd completely forgotten about because of the entirety of the desert being a thing, and it is the withering. Throughout this lush, beautiful, cute, adorable, gorgeous perfection of a jungle, there was some not cute, not adorable, not great, not perfection of a withering, which was little rotted orange areas of the jungle filled to the brim with enemies that want nothing more than to turn your skin into nothing but a coat by ripping it all off your body and wearing it, if you can put that together. And this was known as the Withering. And at the end of the Aranara quest, the Withering is said to have been banished forever because you destroy the source of it. And yet there's still Withering flowers all over the surface. Despite the fact that I, and many others, wiped out the core of the Withering, it's still there. The Withering is still an ongoing threat. Why? It makes no sense, and neither does this region. Who would have thunk? Yeah, Sumeru is, if you couldn't tell, not my favorite region. If anything, it's my least favorite. And with the release of Fontaine, I could say with 100% certainty that has not changed a bit. Fontaine so far has been a really great region. You can swim. You can go under the water. That's cool. How are you still here? How? Give me a lore-accurate explanation to how you are still here. In conclusion, all I can really say is Sumeru was a wasted opportunity. The jungle is beautiful. Some of the music is insanely good, and the first Archon quest was amazing. But the rest of it was pretty much just a letdown. And honestly, if somebody were to ask me what's my favorite part about Sumeru, I'd have to say the fact that it's over. Because while Sumeru wasn't the best, it certainly was the worst. That's all from me, Chknlord63. I'll logging out. Goodbye everybody, and have a great day. Alongside this, it felt like every single event had to have Sumeru included in it in some way, shape, or form. Like the Iridori Festival, as well as the pretty overall mid Dendro ability for Traveler. Another thing that was really kind of not great about Sumeru was the inclusion of the Northlander billets. See that? That's Withering. And you see where I am right now? That's a Wither Zone. This was supposed to be gone, according to the quest, but... So there seems to have been a little bit of an issue during recording. Whoopsie daisies. Oh.